Hey, everybody, and welcome back for a Tuesday edition of your lunch break with me. My name is Ivana, if you are new here. And today we are going to be talking about some news that broke yesterday about the city of Birmingham and how Mayor Randall Woodfin says that there are some city services that have been free for some time that will not be free any longer going forward in these new budget cuts. Now, these are budget cuts that are related to COVID-related losses. Our own Anna Beahm, who covers the city, is going to be here in just a second to talk with us about this, explain this a little bit more, and we'll bring her in just a second whenever she gets on. But y'all go ahead and leave us any questions you have. I will be monitoring them here. I will throw them to Anna, and we will get them answered for you. We're also going to put a link to that story down below in the comments, and that is where you can read up. You can figure out a little bit about what we're talking about here and about some of those things. Now, something that I'll note before Anna gets on here is that in the 2020 budget, which is this year's budget, the city allocated $36.7 million for different boards and agencies. That includes things like the Birmingham Zoo, Railroad Park, different agencies like that. So that's over $36 million, which was included in the 2020 budget. Now, the mayor is expected to present the 2021 budget in August, and that is where we'll see a lot of these cuts. The mayor also said in this letter that he sent out to different agencies that a lot of agencies that had received funds from the city might not be getting those exact same funds going forward. And those, again, are related to COVID-related losses. So a lot of different things that we're looking at here for Birmingham. Yes, thank you so much for watching, Jennifer. Yes, 36 million, 36.7 million was in the 2020 budget. Now, we do expect that 2021 budget, which will be officially presented in August, we expect that budget to be less for these boards, these agencies, and organizations that the city gives money to. We don't have that exact budget in hand. We just know that those cuts are coming. So let me bring on our own Anna Beahm. She will tell you a little bit about what the budget is expected to look like, what some of these losses and services include. So, Anna, have we got you?
Hi.
Hi, Anna. Thank you for joining us. So we were just talking about the budget for this year included $36.7 million for boards and agencies. Now, the budget for next year, I know we aren't going to get that from the mayor until August, but that budget is expected to be less for money for places like the zoo, Railroad Park, and different organizations.
Right. Yeah. And that $36.7 million, that was the amount budgeted for boards and agencies in the 2020 budget. Now, the city's budget is really weird. It runs from July to June. So the 2020 budget actually became realized in 2019. So the budget they're working on is for 2021. But yes, the mayor did say that these organizations can expect to see significantly less funding in the next year's budget.
Now, some of these services we know that have been free for some time to Birmingham residents will be cut. Now, two questions. One, what are those types of in-kind services? And number two, when does that cut start? Does that start now, or does that start in the 2021 budget?
Well, and let me clarify this too. It's not that these services are free for all residents. These services, typically how it works is an organization will say, hey, we want to do XYZ event at the Boutwell, and they'll just ask the city, hey, could we get a waiver for this, or could we have the police come just to, make sure things are safe, or do security, or block off the street, or whatever. And so it's not like it's just free to use. There is a charge for this, but it's that, certain groups and organizations have been able to obtain a waiver when they just ask for it. So, so what'll happen in the future, and I don't know, I'm pretty sure it'll be, when the new budget actually begins, which won't be until it is approved, because technically the 2021 budget year will begin on July 1st, but we won't have a new budget until then, until August or even later, depending on how long it takes the council to work it out. But yeah, so going forward, I don't know exactly when that start date will be. The mayor hasn't said, and the city hasn't said when that will be, but he did say that anyone planning a future event should be sure that they check on those fees and consider that when planning their event, because they're no longer going to be offering as many, free space and time and city resources like they once were.
Right, and that includes police officers to block off streets
Yes,
and different things like that. Now, quick, I want to answer, Jason, your question talking about Church of the Highlands and that money. Let's, the money, number one, the Church of the Highlands services that went to the Housing and Urban Development board in those places, there was no money exchange there. That was volunteer work from Church of the Highlands. And number two, the rental fees from Parker and Woodlawn, which is I think what you're talking about, Jason, that was regarding Birmingham Board of Education. So those are separate entities. And so this is not, those are two different conversations. Just to go ahead and answer that for you, Jason. Another question that Laura asked, and this is interesting. So we know that taking down that Confederate monument in Lynn Park, the Confederate Soldiers and Sailors Monument, came with a $25,000 fine from the state. Did that come out of this budget? Is that part of why maybe this budget is being cut going forward?
The city hasn't said that. Basically what the mayor has said, I mean, that could be, but I just don't know, and I don't want to speculate. But essentially what the city said is that we've been giving away free, letting people use our space for free, paying police overtime out of our pocket, and not charging other permitting fees for some time. And the city hasn't really had a good way to track how much these in-kind services cost. We know that the police overtime budget, the police department exceeds that by millions and millions of dollars every year and has for a long time. But I think just in light of the crunch that the city knows is coming, they wanted to try to get ahead of that and say, hey, we can't just give away services that cost us money without charging people anymore. And Finance Director Lester Smith did say that he expects the city to lose about $73 million in tax revenue due to the coronavirus-related shutdowns, business shutdowns, loss of payroll taxes and things like that. And the city of Birmingham is extremely dependent on those funds. Around 80% of the city's revenue does come from business taxes and sales taxes. And when you've got something like, COVID-19 that forces businesses to be shut down and makes people lose their jobs, the city loses some real money, especially since it's so dependent on that money to make the gears turn.
Now, looking through again some of these questions, Samuel, yeah, you're right. These are things that the city can make people pay for, and many cities do make people pay for. The city has just been offering those services for free in the past, but now because of the money crunch the city is under, and a lot of places are under because of coronavirus-related closures, that is why you're seeing that these budget cuts coming, or that's why we expect to see them coming, rather. So you're right, Samuel, on that one. Now, something that you mentioned was the loss of money. Now, I'm looking here at some notes. The June 16th meeting, you said the director of finance said that corona-related business closures could cost the city $73 million, and that is tax revenue. How does that work, and what is the cost that the city expected versus that $73 million? Is that on par, or is that more?
Are you asking if they expected to lose more, or if that's how much they lost?
Right. Well, did they expect to lose any more? Is this something that they expected to come? Have they prepared for this?
Well, I think we're all sick and tired of hearing the term unprecedented, but this really is an unprecedented time. And it's hard to know what to expect. And the city has said that. Now, this $73 million loss, that is based on an expected revenue loss of about 20%, which is what the city lost during the 2008 financial crisis. I know a lot of people have tried to compare what's happening now to the 2008 financial crisis, but they are two very different types of financial crisis. I know that's maybe odd to try to understand, but a lot of the economists I've talked to have said, yeah, it's easy to try to compare it, but they're very different. So, I mean, we don't know. We don't know how much the city expects to lose besides that 20% estimate. It could be more, it could be less, but until we get the tax receipts, we won't know.
Now, Jennifer, question about COVID, about your question about COVID numbers. When we get done here, Jennifer, I'll leave you a link to our stories on that and our daily updates on that. And you can see the exact numbers county by county, how they are rising or falling. So I'll get you that, Jennifer. One of my producers can get you that now. Now, talking about this budget, now I know that the mayor is expected to present his budget in August, but the year's budget actually ends in July. We are on technically a new year budget in July. What is that 1 month period? What money are we operating on during July to August if there's not a 2021 budget?
So if a new budget is not put into place before the budget year ends, the city will just continue operating under the previous budget. So that just means whatever was allocated for everything during that limbo period, it'll just operate as if the budget year didn't end. It'll just continue in that way.
Now, something that also has been going on in Birmingham for the past week or so is there was a suggestion to change the portion of the 16th Street North name. That was a suggestion that was floated in the city council. And then over the weekend, there was a group of Birmingham activists that wrote a letter to the Birmingham City Council, and it said, please do not rename part of the 16th Street North. Now, what was discussed in council was renaming that part of the street to say, I think Black Lives Matter Boulevard or Avenue. And the group of activists said, we don't want you to change it. To be clear, this was one of the quotes from that letter. It said, to be clear, 16th Street is already the home of where Black Lives Matter. I'm sorry, that might not be the direct quote, but that was something that was mentioned in the letter. And it was saying that 16th Street North is a very big part of civil rights history, and they did not feel like that name should be changed. So what is the latest with City Council considering that proposed name change of that portion of 16th Street North by the 16th Street Baptist Church, by the Civil Rights Institute, Kelly Ingram Park, and that area?
Yeah, so the item was withdrawn from the agenda. It was not on the agenda during today's council meeting, which has already concluded. And Councilor Crystal Smitherman did make a statement saying, we're not doing this. We're not considering this after we have spoken with activists and leaders in the community after they were very strongly. I don't know if none of you have read the full letter. I really encourage you to do so. It really captures that spirit, not only of pride, I think, that people feel for what's happened in Birmingham, but also just how important it is to ensure that those spaces remain how they are. I think in the letter they called renaming 16th Street to be a violent erasure of history. So I think most people, when they hear 16th Street, they think of 16th Street Baptist Church. And that's probably one of the most recognizable names of Alabama civil rights history about what happened there with the bombing. So, but yeah, everyone, I believe, should go read that letter. And I cannot foresee the council trying to rename 16th Street. Now, also in the letter, activists said that they're not against naming a street for Black Lives Matter, but if it is done, it should be done in the same spirit it was done in Washington, D.C., which was to send a strong political message to those in power about the value of Black life.
So the name change is off the table now. Good question from Theodore is, number one, why weren't those activists and why wasn't the city consulted, or those people in the city rather, consulted before the floating of that name change happened in city council? And secondly, who officially withdrew that motion?
I do not know why they were not consulted, but you would think that would be something you would do. You would consult the business owners and the activists who do so much work to ensure that the history that happened on that street is not forgotten. But I believe it was Council President William Parker who did withdraw the item after he had some conversations with activists this weekend.
And Theodore, I hope that answers your question. And a couple other people asking about COVID and those kind of questions. Let me remind you that this Thursday we will have Mayor Randall Woodfin on for a town hall where we will be able to ask him, and some of you can come and ask him directly if you'd like to, questions about reopening, about coronavirus, and different things. That will be with Mayor Randall Woodfin at 11 a.m. on the same page on Thursday. So if you have any questions about that, please come back on Thursday and ask that. And also, there were a couple other comments about this 16th Street name change. I know it's off the table now, but in that letter and in the questions and the conversation about changing that name, there were topics that came up about 16th Street Baptist Church, where we had the bombing in the 60s and where those 4 little girls died. Did that come up as in a reason to keep that name change, to keep that legacy intact?
As far as like not changing the name?
As either one, changing or not changing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, initially, Council President William Parker said that he wanted to change the name of the street as sort of like a nod to the activists and a nod to the history of what happened there. But the activists say, no, we don't need to erase what happened here, and we need to ensure that the legacy of what happened on 16th Street is still recognizable as it already is, and that history is not erased. And again, the purpose that the street in DC was initially renamed was to send a political message, and this would not be fulfilling that function to Black Lives Matter.
Right. Going back to these budget cuts, I know we have some questions. We don't know exactly on what organizations in 2021 will be, or in the 2021 budget, which starts later this year, would be receiving less money than the money that they have been spending. We don't know those numbers. We don't know those exact agencies. We just know that the 2020 budget allocated over $36 million for different boards and agencies like the zoo, Railroad Park, Birmingham Board of Education, different agencies and boards. We don't know what that's going to look like in 2021. We expect to know that in August when this budget comes up and when this budget is presented to the council from the mayor. We expect to know that then. Some of these services we talked earlier about being cut include things like where citizens or groups would have to pay for things like police presence for security or for road closures, for event space and things like that the city and different organizations have been receiving for free from the city. Now, these are things that and people in many other cities do pay for. These are things that the city can charge people for and are not required to be free in any sense of the word. Do we have any idea? I know we don't know the exact number. Do we have an idea of how much money is going to be cut from boards and agencies in the 2021 budget?
No, we don't know. We just know that it's going to be significantly less. One thing to note as well, last year, so like a year ago now, the mayor also trimmed what he called, trimming some fat from the budget, and he did already make some cuts to some nonprofits and other boards and agencies. But instead of like, he took the money away, yes, but he did also double city councilors' discretionary funds. So discretionary funds, basically a pot of money that each city councilor gets to use to support whatever group or project in their district. So while yes, the mayor did cut some funding from nonprofits and other agencies last year, he did double city councilors' discretionary funds. Now, I haven't requested, an itemized list of what the council actually did with that money, but that is something that I'd be curious to look into. And I don't know if the council discretionary funds are going to be cut again as well. But I would expect that it would be some pretty significant cuts, because when you're talking $73 million, that's it's a good chunk of money. For some perspective, last year's budget was $451 million. So that's roughly a fifth of the budget. So there's going to have to be some serious trimming going on.
Theodore asked, and again, Theodore, we do not know what the cuts are going to be for this next budget, but I can ask about last year. Anna, do you know if the funds for the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute were cut in this past year for the 2020 budget?
I do not know, but I would have to do some digging in the budget documents that I have to determine that for sure, but I can find out.
We will look into that for you, Theodore. And again, we don't know what agencies and what boards are going to get their funds cut in this next budget that is supposed to come out here in a few months, but we will be looking for that and we will check on it. So thank all of you so much for watching today, for asking us your questions about the budget, the name change proposal for 16th Street, and more. Again, if you have questions for the mayor directly, come back on Thursday at 11 a.m. where the mayor will be here and you can ask him your questions directly. So thank you so much, Anna, for explaining this to us. We're going to leave a link to that story explaining this a little bit more in depth in these comments. You can click there and get more information about the things that Anna and I talked about today. So thank all of you for watching again. Thank you, Anna, and everybody. We will see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Ivana.